Midnight on Arendronen felt like a long, quiet breath that never ended. The research outpost sat like a pearl under a glass dome, half buried in snow and old ice. Wind moved across the plains with a steady hiss, lifting white dust into thin spirals. Inside the dome, the lights were low to save power. Sleek consoles slept. The air felt clean and cold, almost like it had a sparkle to it. Dr. Elias Ford stood alone at the main station. Hands wrapped around a warm metal mug, listening to the soft hum of life support machines. He was on midnight watch. It was his least favorite shift, and also his most favorite one. He disliked the sleepiness that sank into his bones, but he liked the quiet. The quiet allowed him to notice small things, the tiny blue diode that blinked every 6 seconds on the oxygen scrubber, the gentle sigh of the heating pipes, the radio's faint static like a whisper just beyond hearing. He often wondered if the planet made that whisper. Arendronen was ancient, and he suspected it had a long memory. Most of the crew slept in cryo for the storm. It was normal practice for this moon. The weather could turn from gentle to angry without warning, like a door slamming in the dark. When the red barometer line dropped, the rule was simple. Go down to minimum staff. Tuck the rest into safe dreams, and wait it out. Elias had drawn the short straw this time. He stayed awake with the machines, the storm, and his thoughts. He checked the seismograph feed again. It showed light activity, small shivers under the ice that could have been nothing more than stress in the crust. Still, he kept an eye on it. The mining wing had drilled deep last week and had found old salts trapped in clear crystal proof of an ocean that had died a long time ago. Somewhere down there, under stone and frozen water, lay the memory of waves. The wind rose. The dome's exterior struts groaned, just a little. Elias set down the mug and adjusted the thermal collar of his jacket. He walked the circular walkway that ringed the console pit, boots tapping. He liked to make a loop every hour. It helped him stay alert. He paused at the agricultural bay window. Inside, the rows of hydroponic greens glowed a soft green-blue. Little leaf tips trembled with the airflow. Life in a place that looked like it should have none. He whispered a habit phrase he always said to the plants. "Keep going," he told them. It made him smile at himself. He was a scientist who talked to spinach. When he reached the southern wall, the lights flickered. He stopped. The light steadied. He glanced up at the ceiling strips, then at the status panel by the door. Power. Stable. He waited a beat longer. The lights were fine. He returned to the console, but before he could sit, the radio made a soft chime. Not a voice, a tone. A simple rising note, like the beginning of a bird call. He frowned and checked the log. No incoming transmission line showed active. He tilted his head, listened harder. The tone came again a little stronger this time, a bit more urgent. "Strange," he said. He pulled the headset on and cycled through channels. Nothing. He moved to a diagnostic screen, ran a quick test on the antenna array. Outside, the storm index climbed a little more. The wind was now a low roar over the dome. On the seismograph, a small pulse appeared. It looked like a heartbeat. The lights flickered again. Twice, Elias walked to the airlock status window. From there, he could see the outer door through a small camera feed mounted in the entry tunnel. Snow swept past in long, fast lines that made the camera image look like a scratched film. No figures. No vehicles. The outer panel showed sealed. Pressure normal. He touched the glass with his knuckles. A silly old habit for luck. "Stay put," told the lock like it could listen. The radio tone sounded a third time. It was not like any emergency chime he knew. It felt gentle, if a sound could feel that way. He turned back toward the console, and then every light in the dome went out at once. Darkness moved over the station, like a blanket pulled across a bed. For a second, there was nothing, not even a spark. Ilias's heart jumped. He held still, hands slightly lifted, letting his eyes do their best in the sudden black. He knew the backup would kick in. The question was how fast. A second ticked by, too. Then emergency lighting glowed to life along the floor, thin and pale, turning the room into a ring of ghostlight. Systems began to beep as they woke with reduced power. The air felt colder in that instant. Elias took a steady breath and went to the manual panel. He started the standard checklist, his voice even, his motions neat. He had done this drill a dozen times, but never alone at midnight. Backup engaged. Life support on reduced mode. Heat level 2. External antenna cycling. The radio tone played once more in the quiet. He looked up. The sound seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, like it was part of the air. He reached for the manual crank that could reroute power to the antenna. His fingers closed on the handle. Something hissed softly behind him. He turned. The inner airlock door showed a thin line of light around its seal. That was normal when the inner vestibule lights were on. But the vestibule lights were on emergency power too. They should not look that bright. He watched the thin line. It grew brighter as if someone had turned up a dimmer. Is someone? He began, then stopped. There should be no one there. The airlock cycled. The inner door slid open on a whisper. Cold air rolled in, the kind that smelled like metal and stone and something older. Snow powder drifted over the threshold like dust from a broken vial. He saw a silhouette in the doorway, all still and strange against the pale vestibule glow. For a heartbeat, he thought his eyes had made a trick. Then the figure stepped forward into the emergency light. She was barefoot. He noticed that first because it was so wrong in this place. Her feet made no sound on the floor, but each step left a wet print, a little oval of meltwater and light frost. She wore a long white robe that looked soft but strong, like a thermal weave made by a craftsman who loved the pattern more than the cloth. Her hair was dark and fell in a simple line down her back, not moving even when the cold wind from the lock touched it. Her eyes had a silver color, not quite metallic, not quite luminous, but something in between, the way the moon sometimes looks like a coin dropped into a deep well. Elias did not move. He did not speak. He felt a strange peace and a stronger caution at the same time, like he had stepped from a high stair and found his foot landing on something soft and surprising. She paused at the threshold and looked at him. Her face was calm, not cold, not warm, just clear. Seeing him fully, she gave a small nod that felt like a greeting from an old story. Then, very gently, she let her robe slide from her shoulders. It fell to her elbows, then to her hands, then down in a soft sweep to the floor. The action held no hint of show or game. It was not meant to surprise or to invite. It was a gesture of trust. Underneath, her form was covered in a second layer, like a simple shift of light. Soft, pearly, modest. Across her skin, delicate patterns glowed faintly, running like river lines and constellations. It looked like starlight drawn on a living map. She did not look fragile. She looked like she belonged to a different scale of time. Her voice reached him the way the radio tone had, but clearer. "You called for help?" she said. The words were in perfect standard, but there was an echo to them, a shade of another voice behind the first. "I came." Elias found his voice. "I didn't call anyone." He did not mean it as a rejection. He meant it as a simple truth. He had not pressed any rescue signal. He had not radioed any ship. He had done nothing to invite a barefoot woman with silver eyes into an ice station in the middle of a midnight storm. She tilted her head, as if listening to a sound only she could hear. "The storm was the message," she said. "The old lines woke. Your light reached us." He looked past her into the vestibule. The outer door was closed. The pressure gauges read normal. Ice clung to the seams like lace. The camera on the tunnel showed only blowing snow. He returned his gaze to her. "Who are you?" She stepped forward, leaving the robe at the threshold, bare feet on cold steel. She did not shiver. As she crossed into the main room, the air changed. It felt fuller, not warmer, but more alive, as if it had become a place where voices could sing. She glanced once at the ceiling and once at the floor, like she was greeting the station itself. When her eyes touched the console, every dead screen flickered and came alive. The emergency lights brightened by a small, gentle degree. Elias felt his heart climb into his throat. "How did you do that?" She touched the main console with her fingertips, and the surface lit in a soft wash. No sparks, no crackle. Just a smooth return to waking. "You call this place home," she said. "It agreed to listen to me." That's not how it works," Elias said, but he kept his voice low, careful. "Machines do not listen. They read, they receive, they respond." "Words," she said, and a small smile touched her lips. Not amusement at him, but warmth at the thought. "Words are machines too. They carry meaning. They receive, they respond, they listen." Her hand lifted from the console. The power graph on the screen showed steady. Life support climbed from reduced mode to normal. The heating pipe sighed. Elias let out the breath he had been holding. He felt strange tears behind his eyes, not of sadness or fear, but of relief mixed with awe. He blinked them back and nodded. "Thank you," he said from the center of his chest. The storm leaned harder on the dome. Snow moved like slow rivers in the air. The radio made its thin wire hiss. Inside the station, soft lights held steady. Dr. Elias Ford stood beside Leora and watched the gray world roll past the glass. The dark shape at the edge of the camera frame came and went like a thought he could not quite catch. He did not try to chase it. He made himself calm. Calm was a tool. Leora stood with one hand resting near the window rail. The silver in her eyes shifted gently, like a sky behind thin clouds. "They are testing us," she said. "They want to learn how we breathe." Elias nodded. He understood the idea, though the words were strange. "We should be ready to answer," he said. He meant, we should be ready to act if they press. He ran a quiet check. Heat level 3, holding. Oxygen good. Power reserves low, but steady. Agricultural bay sealed. Cryo stable. Structural sensors within range. He set a new monitor to alert on any pressure change in the airlock. He set a timer to remind him to move, to drink water, to keep the body awake and kind. The seismograph beat slow and regular. Leora listened to the rhythm with her whole posture. "The halls are awake now," she said. "They remember their names. They are near at hand." "What are the halls exactly?" Elias asked. "You said they are rooms and songs. Are they machines?" "They are works," Leora said. "Not machines as you think of them. Not living as you think of that either. They are something in between. Our old wise ones folded knowledge into paths, then laid those paths into the earth. The paths hum when they listen. They carry promise. They can hold a message for a long time without losing its shape. Like memory metal, but for ideas," Elias said, searching for a bridge from his training to her words. "Yes," Leora said, pleased. "A soft metal for thought. When a right voice speaks nearby, the paths rise a little, like grass under a light wind. They show themselves. They share what they hold. Can they help us if those drones try to enter?" Elias asked. "They can make our small shelter feel larger," Leora said. "They can strengthen certain lines. They can slow certain motions. They can guide a wave from one place to another. But they are not weapons. They are keepers." Elias glanced at the perimeter camera again. The smear had split. Now there were two, drifting like curtains made of fine, dark dust. "I'll take keepers," he said. "Keepers are friends." Leora's small smile touched her mouth and then rested. "Your words are simple," she said, "but they carry weight." Touched the console with steady fingers. He had a small thought and followed it. He opened the archive panel and began to type a log entry, not a formal one, but a letter addressed to the station. "If you are reading this," he wrote, "we stood through a night that was heavier than most. We had help from a guest named Leora. She is a guardian. She speaks with old paths under the ice. She says protection is a promise that holds shape even when the world changes." He paused, then added a line in plain language. "We did not run. We listened. Worked. We stayed kind." Saved the entry and closed the panel. It felt good to put the night into words that could stay behind. "Thank you," Leora said softly. He looked at her. "For what?" "For making the night a thing that can be told," she said. "Telling keeps it from becoming a shadow." He took a sip of warm water. He set the cup down. "What do they want?" he asked. The ones outside? Leora took a slow breath. Long ago, they took from my people a set of names. Names have power where I am from. They believe that if they held our names, they could hold us. They tried to bend us toward their fear. They thought we would forget our shape. They wanted us to serve that fear without knowing we did.
Did it work?
Elias asked. For a time, Leora said, but there was a day when help came from far away. The help did not speak our language at first. They did not know our songs. But they held protection like a lamp. They stayed. They spoke simple truths. They said, this is wrong. They said, we will help you stand. They did not take our names. They learned how to say them, and they handed them back to us with care. She touched the rail lightly. That help felt like sunlight on winter skin. It made us remember we were not alone. Humans. Elias asked softly. I believe so, Leora said. The forms were different then. The words were simpler. But the way they acted felt like the way you act. Careful. Steady. Stubborn in a good way. She looked at him. You remind me of them. Elias felt heat behind his eyes again, the small kind that lived in the chest and rose at odd times. He nodded once. Thank you, he said. Before he could say more, the perimeter alert chimed. A soft, single note. The camera showed the dark smear draw close to the dome, then slide away and up, and hover above the highest brace like a patient bird. The second smear took position near the airlock tunnel. Elias zoomed the view. Tiny joints glinted inside the blur. The thing looked like a school of black minnows pressed into a net shape. The edge of it buzzed like a bee's path in a field. Will they attack the glass? Elias asked. They study first, Leora said. Then they test the easiest seam. The airlock, he said, yes. Elias pulled up the manual bolts for the inner door. He locked them. He checked the outer door pressure and the seals. All green. He layered a local field around the vestibule, the strongest push the small coils could make. It would shove snow, shake ice, and confuse some sensors. But these drones were not simple machines. May I? Leora asked, nodding toward the field control. Yes, Elias said, stepping aside. She laid her fingers on the dial. She did not push it higher. She did not change the frequency in a big way. She made a slight adjustment so fine that the number on the screen barely moved. Then she hummed 3 small notes and took her hand away. What did you do? Elias asked. I asked the field to remember how to be a path, she said. Not a wall. A path that is very narrow and correct. When those outside try to move straight, the path will guide them into curves. Their own speed will tire them. Their question will not find an answer. Elias tried to see it in his head and found he could. We made a maze, he said. A kind one, Leora said. It does not harm. It only keeps moving the door they want a little to the side, again and again, until they see the dawn and leave the game for another time. A dull tick sounded from the airlock pressure gauge. The number climbed a hair, then fell. Another tick. Another climb. The hovering smear pressed. Slid pressed. The field coil made a faint ring, like a finger circling a glass. Leora watched the dial. Her face stayed very calm. The radio wire hiss went quiet for a breath, then came back. Elias looked up. The hairs on his arms rose. That felt like a silence with meaning, he said. It was, Leora said. A question paused. On the seismograph, the slow rhythm shifted. It split and doubled. A second pulse rose beneath the first, lower and stronger. Elias leaned in. What is that? The halls are humming with us, Leora said. They are not only under the station. They run long under the plane. They join other halls. They are singing their lines to each other, telling the shape of what is above. It helps them know how to hold us, Elias. Listen to the gentle double beat like a calm drum in a far room. He let it fill the spaces between his thoughts. It made it easier to keep his movements neat. The camera showed the second smear move away from the airlock tunnel and slide, low along the ground to the west brace. It lifted a few inches of snow and then set it down again. It did this 3 times, as if teaching itself the weight of the world. Then it climbed and pressed to the brace cap. "They will try a joint," Elias said. Leora nodded once. Yes, he brought up the joint sensors. Pressure normal. Temperature normal. He said, a whisper of heat through the brace. Not enough to melt the joint, but enough to make it expand the littlest bit and feel solid and satisfied. The sensor flickered green. Leora glanced at him. "Well done," she said. They worked like that for a time that felt both short and long. The smears moved and pressed, drifted and tested. Elias answered with small shifts of heat and field, small locks and unlocks, small changes of rhythm that made the station feel alive and attentive. Leora answered with touches and hums that asked old paths to be near. The night did not stop being heavy, but it became something he and she could shape with careful fingers. "Listen," Leora said after the fourth test on the southern brace. She closed her eyes. He closed his, following her lead. At first he heard only storm. Then he heard something within the storm. It was a thin sound, like a child's whistle, very far away, but it did not rise or fall. It held one same note. "That is their call," Leora said. "They are asking the night to tell them we are afraid." "What does the night say?" Elias asked. "The night says," Leora answered, "that we are awake." When he opened his eyes, the first faint idea of dawn sat at the edge of the world. It was not light yet, not even close, but the storm's tone had shifted. It felt like a long breath had been taken far to the east. Elias checked the cryopods. All green. He checked the agricultural bay. The row of small greens looked like a calm choir under their lights. He glanced at the shelf with the paper crane and the knitted hat. He thought of the crew's names and said them in his head again. Slow and quiet count. "Do you think they will keep pressing until sunrise?" he asked. "They may try once more," Leora said. "They do not like to leave empty-handed. But they will not take what is in this room." The pale dawn had spread across Arendronine like a slow hand brushing the ice. Light did not rush here. It crept, layer by layer, softening the edges of the snowfields and turning frost into silver lace. The station dome stood quiet and strong, holding back the last whispers of the storm. Inside, Dr. Elias Ford and Leora moved through the main room with steady purpose. Their previous night had been long, quiet, and full of careful small acts. Now, the test they had prepared for was near. Outside. The black shapes of the drones had vanished with the storm, but their presence was remembered in the thin lines of snow disturbed and in the slight hum that lingered beneath the floor. Elias checked the perimeter sensors. Nothing stirred. Still, he did not relax completely. The night had taught him that even absence could hold danger. Leora walked beside him barefoot, her silver eyes scanning every surface, every shadow. The faint patterns across her skin shimmered softly, reflecting the slow light of dawn. "They will return if we are careless," she said. "We have only delayed them." Elias nodded. "We cannot be careless," he agreed. He set the final status checks. Power reserve stable, heat steady at level 3, oxygen at normal. The agricultural bay lights glowed softly, and the cryopods were still safe. He breathed a little easier. "We have prepared everything we can," he said. "Yes," Leora agreed. "But preparation alone is not enough. Standing is what counts. Presence, steadiness, careful hands, and trust." Elias glanced at her. "Trust. Trust," she repeated. "You trusted the paths under the ice. You trusted the shapes and the small truths. You stood calm when fear could have taken the night. That is why the storm did not break us." She paused. "And why we will stand now." The faint vibration of the floor shifted. Elias felt it under his boots before any sensor picked it up. Outside, the drones had returned, drawn by some distant signal they had been following. Some dark curiosity that the night had finally allowed. Their black shapes glimmered at the edge of visibility, moving like shadows pressed into a fog. Elias exhaled slowly and set his hand on the console. "They are here," he said. His voice was calm, but his chest carried the weight of adrenaline. "They will test the dome first," Leora said. She stood near the support beam, her hand hovering just above it. She hummed a small note, low and soft. The vibration moved through the steel like a quiet song, invisible yet present. The black forms pressed closer to the airlock, their sharp edges probing. Sensing Elias followed her rhythm, adjusting field coils and heat layers. Together, their hands on the console guided subtle changes that the drones could not perceive. Leora's presence amplified the small signals, turning them into a quiet barrier, not of violence, but of control. The drones pressed and shifted, tested and recoiled. They found resistance, not in force, but in steadiness. They think strength comes from breaking, Leora said. They will learn differently here. The drones paused at the outer glass, their forms hovering like smoke pressed into shapes. Elias saw the broken names they tried to write in the snow outside. Each attempt was guided back by the subtle hums and pulses from inside. They tried to find weakness, but each adjustment Elias and Leora made kept the lines of the station steady, the glass unbroken, and the air calm. They do not understand humans, Elias said softly, or what you are. They are learning, Leora replied, but only slowly, not fast enough. The hours passed, measured in quiet movements, pulses, hums, and adjustments. Elias checked the cryopods once more. All were stable. He walked through the agricultural bay, ensuring the small greens were undisturbed. Leora followed. Together, they moved in quiet coordination, each gesture deliberate, each step thoughtful. Finally, the sky above began to lighten further. The first true edge of sun touched the distant ice. The black forms outside the dome paused. Their dark shapes, sharp and precise, seemed confused by the slow warmth of light, the movement of air, the subtle changes in the station's field. They will not act while the light strengthens, Leora said. She stepped to the airlock, her bare feet soundless on the floor. They respect the promise of the day as it is now. Elias adjusted the outer sensor array. We can't rely on that forever. Eventually, they may press when we are not ready. No, Leora said, and her voice carried quiet certainty. Not while we stand together. The first crew member to wake was Seda, the youngest of the team. Her cryopod hissed open. Elias moved quickly to assist, keeping his eyes on the sensors outside. Leora remained still, calm, watching every movement. Seda's eyes blinked against the soft dome light. She rose, confused, then saw Elias and Leora. Dr. Ford, she asked. What happened? You slept through a storm, Elias said gently. The station is fine. We are fine. Let me help you out, second pod hissed. Murillo awoke, then Ken, Amina, Joe, Yeager, and finally Klein. Each moved carefully, sensing the strange calm that had settled in the station. They were cautious, but none panicked. The dome and its quiet guardians had done their work. Elias guided each crew member to the common area. Leora stepped forward. You are safe, she said. Her voice was soft, yet carried the authority of experience. The crew looked at her, unsure, curious. This is Leora, Elias said. She helped us through the night. She guided the station when we needed it most. The crew's eyes widened as they took in her presence. She did not make a gesture of dominance, nor did she bow. She simply stood with quiet grace, silver eyes meeting theirs briefly. There was no fear, only a calm acknowledgement of the night's events. One of the crew, Amina, asked softly, You saved us? Yes, Leora replied simply. I answered the call. The night sent it. I followed, Elias added, and she kept the drones from breaking in. All without harm. The crew exchanged looks. Their gratitude was quiet, thoughtful, filled with relief. They understood the weight of what had been done, even if the details remained mysterious. Outside, the storm had fully passed. The black forms were gone. Light touched the horizon fully now, warming the ice with pale gold. The station glowed in the morning, a small stronghold against a vast and quiet world. Elias turned to Leora. What happens now? He asked. I return to the halls beneath the ice, she said. My work continues there. But I will watch this station, and I will keep the promise we made together." He nodded. "Will we see you again?" "Perhaps," she said, "if the night calls. If the paths need a hand, if humans need guidance, I will be near." She stepped toward the inner corridor, then paused. "Remember this. Courage is quiet. Strength is in steadiness. Care for what you wake." He watched her walk away, barefoot, quiet, patterns glowing faintly across her skin. She passed through the maintenance area and disappeared into a side tunnel that led to the sealed stairwell down toward the hidden halls. The crew remained silent for a long moment, processing the calm heroism they had witnessed. One by one, they moved to their tasks, checking the station, tending the plants, monitoring systems. But the memory of the barefoot guardian remained with them, soft presence in every corner of the dome. Elias looked out at the ice, the horizon bright now. He could not see the halls, nor the paths beneath the frozen crust, but he felt them, humming quietly under the station. He felt Leora's presence in that hum, steady and calm, a reminder of the night's promise. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty hall, "for everything," and the station seemed to reply with a faint, steady pulse, as if agreeing, "You are never truly alone when care stands beside you." The sun rose higher, brushing the station with warmth. The crew gathered in the common area. Elias shared what they had learned: the storm, the dark shapes, the careful defenses, and the quiet courage of Leora. They listened, not with disbelief but with respect and understanding. The memory of the night would shape their work and their actions. Outside, Arendronine gleamed, a frozen world of quiet beauty. Inside, the station thrived, alive with both human and guardian energy. The horizon promised more days, more challenges, and more quiet heroism, as long as the crew remembered the lessons of the night: courage, care, and standing together. Elias returned to the main console. He set the logs to record the events of the night. Not the technical data alone, but the truth. The night had been survived, guided by quiet hands, by careful thought, and by the presence of one who knew how to listen. He paused and smiled faintly. The horizon stretched, pale and calm. The station was safe. The crew was safe. And somewhere beneath the ice, the halls were awake, keeping watch, humming quietly, remembering the promise made between human and guardian. "Together," he whispered again. Together, the silence seemed to answer, and so the day began. Strong, steady, and filled with the quiet triumph of a night survived with care, courage, and the presence of someone extraordinary.